This is the Late Late Lunch Show with Rod Maxwell.
Supported by
Childbird Learning in Nature's Playground. Progress.
So on the Late Late Lunch Show today, we're going somewhat global, and we're going to see, because I'm talking to a man who's in the middle of an around the world yacht adventure where he has different people joining him as the crew at different legs of it. His name is Nick Hine, and he is the skipper of a Stormbird, I believe is the name of the boat. Nick, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you.
So
the sunny Cape Town.
You are in Cape Town at the moment, and so let's talk about this whole adventure. You are sailing around the world in is she 62 feet? Is she Stormbird?
That's correct. Yes.
So
just shy of 19 meters.
So she's a big boat,
Yes.
and that requires you to have a reasonable crew. And essentially, as you've been sailing around the world, different people have joined you to be your crew, I guess, who have had different levels of sailing experience.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
So
Some are very experienced, and some have done little, but they've all been interested in joining my adventure. And so, as long as they know one end of the boat from the other, I can teach them the rest.
And to get round the world, you set off, was it last December, January?
No, I set off in July 23.
Oh my goodness, okay.
So I've been going now just over 3 years. It's taken me this length of time to get to Cape Town.
So let's go back to basics, right? What was behind the whole idea of you sailing around the world and doing so with people who were volunteers, and some of them I believe have been your family as well. But what was the whole background to doing the whole trip?
Okay, when I was about 8 years old, I was rowing a little rowing boat in Dartmouth in Devon. And this man on the shore said, "Excuse me, young man, will you row me to my boat?" I said, yes. So he got in, he rowed me. I rowed him to his boat called British Steel 3 in the middle of the Dart. And he told me he was going around the world against the prevailing winds. And he showed me around the boat and told me his plans. And I thought, a little sort of, I'd like to do that. Anyway, his name was Shea Blythe, a very famous sailor. So I then read all the sailing books, and a dream formed in my head that one day I would like to sail around the world. Now, it's taken me a long time to get to that stage. So I suppose I left when I was 61, but that dream didn't go. And so I planned my life and set off in July 23. And I'm now about to go back to the UK, probably another 7,000 miles to sail. But I've fulfilled my dream over the last 3 years.
Wow. Now, was sailing something that's been with you all the way through your life?
Yes. Well, it's something I've always loved. My grandparents lived in Dartmouth, and my grandfather had a boat. And in fact, I've got a picture of his boat on my yacht, so I believe he's coming with me. I think he'd enjoy that.
Yeah.
And basically, he taught me to sail, and I always loved it. And you know how life takes certain avenues. You know, you get married, you have a family. There isn't much time for those sort of things, but it never left me. So as time went on, I tried to do as much as I reasonably could. And then in 2011, I decided to get my day skipper qualification and carried on from there. I then did yacht mast. And then in 2019, on another boat I owned, we did the Atlantic. We sailed the Atlantic, the four of us. So I got that out of my system, and that was a precursor for this. But I always wanted to do this, so then I planned my life. So I sold my other boat, and I bought this boat in the Caribbean. It was sailed back by a delivery crew to the Azores, and then I sailed it back to the UK from the Azores, prepared it over the course of a year, and then left in July 23 on my voyage.
Now, of course, you are using wind power, essentially, although you will have a motor on board the boat, you're using wind power. Have you gone against the prevailing wind then as part of your route?
Not really, because what you do is, if you read into it, you tend to sail with the prevailing winds, the trade winds, because they help you around the world. So mainly from the east to west is the route that you follow. Of course, there are times when the wind's against you and the wind doesn't always go in the direction you would like. So sometimes you have to perhaps sail a different course or a different angle. or if there's no wind, you have to motor sometimes. But I'd say probably 25-30% of the time, you may have to use the engine.
Right,
Because
okay,
you just
okay.
haven't got enough wind in certain parts of the world.
Yeah.
But generally, sailed as much as I can, and yeah, it's I love it. It's nice to be out there.
Well, we'll take a break, and then we're going to be back with Nick talking about this adventure on board Stormbird with different people who've joined them all the way across the world, and you're just about to get ready to embark on. Well, I guess it's the last leg, then, Nick.
It is really the last leg, yes. Well, we'll be going from Cape Town to St Helena, which is a British island off the African coast, then close to Ascension Island, which is another British island, and then we'll probably have to stop in Cape Verde, which are Portuguese.
Not a bad place to stop.
Refuel and get some more provisions, and then from there head to the Azores, and then from the Azores back home, so we can use the trade winds, then the southwesterly winds, to head us back towards Falmouth and the UK coast.
Well, we'll talk more about your adventure and the route you've taken, and more about some of the challenges. And I've done a little bit of sailing with one of your current crew, actually, Mr. Smith, and there's nothing quite like it, actually, I got to say. But let's take a break. We'll be back with Nick Hine in a couple of minutes' time.
You're listening to the Late Late Lunch Show with
Back to the Garden Childcare, where little explorers grow naturally.
So today, my guest is a man called Nick Hine, who is embarking on the last part of an around-the-world trip. You said, Nick, started in 2023, 2024?
23, July 23.
Wow.
So I retired on the 30th of June 23, and on the 15th of July, I set off from the UK on my adventure.
And was this always the plan, hit retirement and just go off and explore?
Well, the plan was to sail around the world, so it took me about 5 years to put the right things in place to be able to set off in July 23, and the plan was also to do it, and I couldn't carry on working, running a company whilst doing this trip, so I wanted to sever that, enjoy it, and not have any ties like that, which would interfere with it.
So let's just talk about the logistics of something like this to begin with, because you are, some people have managed to sail, say, 36-foot boats, a solo type thing. 72-foot, not a chance. It's a huge vessel. I mean, it's how many sails you got there? You got your jib, and you've got what, 2 mainsails, or what do you got?
Well, you have your mainsail, Genoa, which is a foresail, and then you have a staysail. And then I also have a thing I call it the Blue Baron. It's a parasail, like a big spinnaker at the front, but it has a sort of parachute opening. So, yeah, and what the reason for a Genoa and a staysail is a bit like changing down gears. You've got extra gears to play with. So if the wind is stronger, you move down a gear and you put out the staysail instead of the Genoa.
Yes.
And you can reef the sails, as they call it, and you shorten your sail plan to adapt to the wind strength. And
what sort of speed, what sort of knots are you getting up to when everything's going well?
Well, I think the average around the world has been 7.3, but quite often we're doing 8 or 9 knots. But you don't necessarily have the wind 24 hours a day, but we've done 227 miles in 24 hours. That's my record.
272 miles in 24 hours?
227 in a 24-hour period.
Wow.
And that was down the African coast with the Aguilas current under us. But if you take the current away, my best 24-hour run was 208 miles.
Wow, excellent. And I mean, it's a strange thing sailing. I've done just a little bit, but you can be going quite slowly, so 8 or 9 knots, but it feels different to what it would be if you were in a motorboat or whatever. It's the wind power, and it's the challenges of managing that wind in the right way, and some way the speed is not comparative to other forms of movement.
No, it sounds quite slow, but 8 to 9 knots is quite fast for a sailing boat.
Yeah,
and there is actually, believe it or not, a formula which determines what your maximum speed of your boat is. It's the length of the waterline that determines it.
Right.
But you with currents and things like that as well, they can speed. So Yeah, it seems slow, but it's actually not that slow. And it's very nice. It's all quiet, and you're swooshing along the
Yeah.
water, and the boat's creaking, and everything's it's just. And I never get bored of looking at the ocean, because it's a bit like, I put it, you sit down next to a log fire, you never seem to get bored looking into a log fire burning.
Yeah.
And so for me, the sea is like that.
And you're always adjusting, well, not always adjusting sails, because I guess you're going to have longer periods, but there's always something to look at with the sail setup and some little movement that you can make to get it absolutely rigged perfectly.
Yeah, trimming. What I also use is a thing called wind vane mode. So I have an autopilot on the boat, so I can switch that on, so the boat sails itself. But if I put it on wind vane mode, as the wind changes direction slightly, so does the boat. So you trim the sails to that, and then as the wind moves, you're maximizing the trim as you're going along. So you're not having to necessarily trim it out regularly. But yes, things do change. You change course, things like that. And we're always on watch. So if we're sailing 24 hours a day, we have different watch systems. So 2 people are on watch at a time. They're running the boat and trimming it and making sure we're going in the right direction.
Well, we're going to take another break. We'll talk about the route, and we'll talk about crew, because you're relying on volunteers, and I'm interested in the dynamics, because even though it's a big boat, you're in a small area, and you've got to get on. You've got to take your roles as well, and even over a weekend sailing around the Lake District, that could be a challenge at times. So we'll be back with Nick Hine talking about his round the world adventure currently in Cape Town. We'll be back with him in a couple of minutes' time.
You're listening to the Late Late Lunch Show with
Back to the Garden Childcare, where little explorers grow naturally.
So, Nick, you set off, and was it Falmouth you set off from?
No, I set off from the Hamble, which is in obviously near Southampton, as part of the Solent, as we would know it.
Okay, and did you knew your route, I guess, or how much of the route did you know in advance?
Pretty well all of it. Well, sort of all of it. I knew which route I was going to go, but obviously different islands when you get there, that changes. But I knew the essential route. The only bit that was in doubt was whether I could go through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal back. And as time went on, things did not improve in that area of the world. So in the end, I knew I had to go around the bottom of Africa, which is what I'm doing now.
So that's purely for geopolitical reasons then?
Well, there's piracy in Yemen, Somalia. There are problems. Obviously, the latest war with Iran has proved to be difficult. And my insurance company for the yacht said, no, you can't go through the Red Sea. So I would have liked to have done that, but unfortunately I couldn't, so I've had to come a different route.
And what challenges does the Red Sea specifically bring?
Well, the challenges when you go into the Red Sea, you've got Yemen and Somalia either side.
Right.
And therefore, the risk is that pirates will come and board your boat. There is already an international community of military nations which actually police the Red Sea and are policing the cargo ships and tankers that are going up and down it. Some of them actually have armed guards and things like that. So it's a problem in that area. And the Houthis are there as well and things of that nature. So the risk is piracy getting in. And once you're in, it's also quite a challenging sail because the wind normally howls down the Red Sea. So you're having to what we call beat into the wind. You tack your way up. So it's actually quite a hard sail up to the top. But once you're there, and also where you can stop on the way, because there aren't that many countries that are safe and things of that nature. So all in all, it's quite a challenging bit of water.
So when you set off, you set off down the west coast of Europe, and then essentially went right across the ocean through to this Pacific.
Yes. So what we did was we go down to Spain and Portugal, crossing what we call the Bay of Biscay.
Yeah.
And then I had some family come out, and we had a little bit of a holiday there. Then from Spain, we went off to Madeira, and then to the Canaries. The reason to go to the Canaries is that's a good stepping stone point from which to go across the Atlantic from east to west. So in January 24, we left the Canaries, headed across to Barbados and then other parts of the Caribbean. And then from the Caribbean, went across the Caribbean Sea over to Panama. and checked in there. But we also went for about 3 weeks to what we call the San Blas Islands, which are a lovely set of islands about 90 miles west of Panama, with sandy, typical sort of sandy palm tree type island. Imagine those sort of remote islands that people sort of castaway type stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And they have coral reefs and things like that. And they're a beautiful set of islands owned really by the Gunner Indians. And we had some nice experiences with them, but a lovely place to spend 3 weeks before going back to Panama. Then we went through the Panama Canal, which was quite a challenge with cargo ships and tankers.
I can imagine.
And then from Panama across to Galapagos, which is an amazing place.
Wow.
All the wildlife there. And then from Galapagos, we did the longest trip from there to the beginning of French Polynesia, called the Marquesas Islands. That was 3,415 miles non-stop. Took us 19 days. We didn't see any ship for 19 days or anything, hardly. Anyway, the Marquesas is lovely. It's got 3 different sets of islands, the Marquesas, the Tuamotus, which are like coral atolls, and the Society Islands, which is where Tahiti is part of them. So I spent probably 4 or 5 months going through all of those.
Wow.
And then from Tahiti to Nui, which is a very unusual little island, Tonga, and then all the way down to New Zealand, where that was the end of year 1. So it's about 14,000 miles.
Wow.
And then in New Zealand, my wife came out. We had a good holiday going around the 2 islands. And then 7th of January 25, we headed off from New Zealand to Sydney, Australia. And we arrived just before a storm. And at anchor, we had 52 knots blowing in a great rainstorm.
Wow.
As a force 10 at anchor.
So 52 knots. So would that be about 40 miles an hour, something like that?
Yeah, it was a force 10.
Wow.
So, and the anchor held, so that was okay. Anyway, really, I spent about 6 months going up the eastern Australian coast and the Whitsunday Islands and the Great Barrier Reef, etc. And then into Indonesia, where I joined a rally called the Indonesian Rally. And we went 3 months through Indonesia, then to Malaysia, and then to Thailand at the end of year 2. I spent a bit of time around Thailand. And then year 3, went from Thailand to Sri Lanka to India to the Maldives. Then I got a permit to go to Chagos, which has all been in the news recently.
Mm-hmm.
Chagos to Mauritius, Reunion to Durban to Port Elizabeth to Cape Town.
Right. And that's where you currently are. So yeah. I noticed from your website, which is stormbridgegoesglobal.co.uk, that this is called the Alan Phillips route. Why is it called that?
Well, there's a book written by Alan Phillips, and he calls it the Milk Run route, which he says is the nicest, warmest, easiest way to sail around the world. That was his idea.
And have you found it to be that?
Well, it has been a nice route, yes, but it's quite hard work because it's almost like having a full-time job in that I have to think ahead 6 months. So I'm organising all these crews you've talked about. So I had probably up to about 40 people have come and join me over the 3-year period. So I have to organise that. There are repairs and things that need doing to the boat all the time. Then I need to think ahead of marinas to book into, where I get works done, all the sort of provisioning. I had to think about all the spares I needed to carry before I left. I mean, it's just every day there's something going on, but that's part of the journey, really. You can't expect that not to happen. So It's how you deal with those challenges and how you enjoy it as you're going around.
Well, let's talk about some. I'll take a break, and I want to talk about the crew and talk about the dynamics of that and what you've learned from that, and what you've drawn on from your own professional experience as well. I'm intrigued by that. So today I'm speaking to Nick Hine, and if you go to his website, it's called stormbridgegoesglobal.co.uk, and
Stormbird.
Stormbird goesglobal.co.uk, and so the story of his sail around the world with a number of different crew, and currently he is in Cape Town with somebody from Altrincham, actually, Dave Smith, somebody who I've sailed with a couple of times, but nothing like this on the quiet calms of Lake Windermere. We'll be back with Nick in a couple of minutes' time.
You're listening to the Late Late Lunch Show with
Back to the Garden Childcare, where little explorers grow naturally.
You know, Nick, when I look at this and I think of the logistics and I think of planning and I think of all the things that are unpredictable, which you get with this type of trip, what have you drawn on from your previous life, your professional life, and what has surprised you about doing the trip that you maybe didn't think about as much previously?
I suppose I've always been quite organised. I started off in merchant banking. I was then a policeman in London for 7.5 years.
Right.
I did my degree part-time, and then I transferred to become essentially a lawyer. And I was a barrister to start with, and I became a solicitor, and I was a solicitor the rest of my career. So I'm always used to sort of managing and organising cases, if we put it like that. And then the last 10 years, I ran my own law firm, which specialised in employment law. So really, my organisational skills were fairly fine-tuned, I suppose, and therefore I planned probably 5 years ahead for this voyage, and I had to work out a whole load of things that I needed to do in order to achieve it, and I put those things in place. So I think organisation-wise, it's a lot of work, but I could cope with that. What surprised me was how much DIY I had to do. The things go wrong on the boat and you have to fix it. So, for example, I have a generator, which I have on the boat as well as an engine, but the generator charges the batteries when we need to charge the batteries, because we got two fridges and a freezer going all the time. When we're running sailing, we've got all the instruments on, so it's drawing quite a lot of power, and therefore twice a day I generally have to charge the batteries. But I have a water maker, so we can be totally independent. So I can make from seawater fresh water. So my water maker runs, but I can only use it when the generator runs. So one time I had a problem with the generator. So if I can't charge my batteries, I suppose I could use the engine, but I can't run the water maker, so I can't make water. So there we are in the middle of an ocean with 6 of us. We're using water all the time. Have I got enough water to get me to anywhere safe? Because it's a life-threatening thing.
Yes.
So anyway, we had to work it through, and I worked out what the problem was, and then we've managed to solve it. And then obviously that then means we can use the water maker again. But things happen which you don't realize because things break. You don't think they're going to break, but they do. So you're always having to mend things and fix things and work out, okay, from what I've got, can I make this work again? And so that surprised me. It was more work than I thought in that direction.
And do you find yourself having to work with imperfect solutions, and you have to get used to that you can't get everything right?
Yeah. The other thing is you can plan to the nth degree. Oh, we're going to go there and we're going to do this, and then something happens. So I've learned that don't overplan. Have an idea what you're going to do and where you're going to go, but things change so quickly that you just have to throw away that plan and make a new one.
Yes.
So be prepared to be adaptable and flexible, and it doesn't really matter if you're going to go there. Well, we can't go there because of the wind or because we've got a problem. We've got to go there. So you just have to be flexible and adapt.
And of course, the beautiful thing about sailing is you're working with nature, the winds, and you can't control that. You've just got to basically galvanize them as best you can, if that's not the best word. But you've also got things going on across the world. We've got Straits of Hormuz and whatever, and that's also causing you to readjust as well. Has it made you feel different about the world in terms of its size or the characteristics or the commonness of it? What is your reflection as you've been sailing around the world?
Well, my reflection is it's been great to see different parts of the world and the people in those different countries, because I haven't been to some of them before, and to realize how they live and operate. And some, for example, in Indonesia, for example, they've got nothing. They're very poor, but they're so welcoming and friendly, and they want to share what they have.
Yeah.
And it's that sort of attitude that you think, hang on a minute, think of all those people in the UK. They're all on benefits, all expect to be paid. They all expect the government to pick up the tab. Hang on a minute. There are places throughout the world. Wake up and smell the coffee. They've got nothing. There's no social security. They're not working. They're not earning anything. We're so lucky in many respects, and there are so many parts of the world where people really have nothing, and they've got no backup.
And that is one of the things that travel of a different kind allows you to do. I mean, I've been lucky enough to be in the Serengeti and in the middle of nowhere, and you're talking to people who are looking after you there, and you realize sometimes how much they appreciate the simple and basic things of life. I can imagine when you're in the middle of the Atlantic or the middle of the Pacific and there's nothing else around you and you've got the sky, it draws all sorts of emotions, as well as when you meet people about how, I don't know, how small you are in the world, maybe. I don't know.
Well, that's true, and how beautiful the ocean and the world is.
Yes.
And how badly we are treating it as a people. The rubbish and the plastic and everything like that. And you just realize that, we've got to do something about this. People have got to make more of an effort. Otherwise, we'll lose all this beauty.
So you've seen that. You've seen the effects of modern life on the oceans.
Well, Indonesia is a classic example. There's no real waste management there. And the amount of plastic and rubbish in the ocean is terrible. That's something they really do need to resolve and sort out.
Okay. I'm going to take an all break, and I'm going to come back and talk to you about the team, because there's a number of people who have sailed with you across a couple of oceans, and it looks like there might have been a couple of returns as well. And that draws on a whole different set of skills. I'm delighted today to be speaking with Nick Hine. He is almost on his last leg of a round the world journey on board Stormbird, and you can follow him on stormbirdgoesglobal.co.uk. You can hear the story. You can see fantastic photographs as well, and know more about it. We'll be back with him in a couple of minutes' time.
You're listening to the Late Late Lunch Show with
Back to the Garden Childcare, where little explorers grow naturally.
So, Nick, I am going to ask you about the crew, because as somebody who has worked in teams in my professional life before, and often I work with different teams every time I did a project, there is something very interesting about forming a team and working with people with different personalities, for example, and with different motivations. What was your thinking going into this? Because you obviously need a crew. You're not paying them. They're volunteers as such. They're in it for their own adventure. They've got their own objectives as well, and it's their time. But you are the captain. You are the leader. What was your thinking going into this in terms of how you would work with that dynamic and how you would run it?
Okay, I wanted a large boat in order to be able to have enough cabins to take people with me. And therefore, hence why I bought Stormbird. And the idea is that I love to share what I am enjoying, as it were. So what I did was I put I was a member of the Cruising Association, which is a sailing organisation based in London, and I told them what my trip was, and I had a whole load of people contact me. And I have a sort of crewing section there, and they contacted me and were interested in joining me. So to start with, I had a whole load of people, and I had them down for training weekends in the Solent. So I invite them down for a weekend. They can see what I'm like. I can see what they're like, and they can see whether they like the idea of it or not. But also, I'm very clear with people what I expect, and I go through the boat inside and out, explain to them all about the boat. I'm very conscious of safety, and I make people wear their life jackets, for example, and I have a whole load of safety procedures which I email them in advance they can read, and then we go through those procedures before we go out at all. So everyone knows what I'm about and what I expect from them. So I could see what they were like. So that's to start off with. But as time's gone on, I obviously can't do them training weekends. So what I tend to do is I will ask them to do a sailing CV, which I need to send to my insurer anyway, so I can see what sailing they've done, and I send them mine so they can see and format it on that basis. And then I arrange a call with them, like a call like this, a Zoom call or a WhatsApp call, and I'll chat with them and explain what I'm about and what I'm doing. They can ask me any questions, and I begin to form a sort of, do I think the person will fit or not? And then sometimes you have to make a decision relatively quickly. I think they'll fit. I can teach them the rest, and they come on board. So again, when they come on board, I go through the boat with them. I tell them what I expect, etc. But we're about to have fun and enjoy the sailing, but at the same time, we have to follow the rules, as it were. So I have 3 watches essentially. We do 3 4-hour watches during the day between 8 in the morning and 8 in the evening, and then 4 3-hour watches at night. And I will allocate, well, normally I have 3 watch leaders, myself and 2 others who are probably the more experienced sailors. Some of them have been back 6 or 7 times, actually. They've enjoyed it so much. And then I allocate a person to them so they work together. But at first, it's all a bit strange for them, and but what I'm looking for is people get stuck in, volunteer, help out, the cooking, the washing up, all the things we have to do. But most of the time, it's all worked quite well. And you have, I think, all the sort of storming, forming, norming, as the business would speak. And it takes probably 5 or 6 days, but by the 6 days or 7 days, we're all working as a team. There's generally little problems. If there are, I will take them aside to have a word with them. But I also ensure that we have a supper together as a team every night. And there is a moan section. So if anyone's got any moans or concerns, they can raise them there and we'll talk about it and deal with it. Well, they can always come and see me any time. But I've hardly had many moans at all. So people generally get on, they all start getting to know each other, and it gels. And I've had very few people that haven't worked out. I had one guy in Australia who fell ill, and I had to get him off the boat because he had an infection. I didn't realize, but I'm lucky I did get him off the boat because I think he might have died if I hadn't taken that action.
Wow.
Yeah. And another guy came, and I noticed a few things about him. He wouldn't wash up very much. And what he would do is see someone making supper, and he would then say, "Oh, let me cut some carrots up for you," or something like that. And then he thought he was doing part of the meal, therefore he didn't have to wash up. And then he would go down and help himself to seconds without asking anyone else whether he would like some more. Anyone else like more?
Yeah.
And then one time he was on watch with me, and I was downstairs sorting something out. And he's supposed to be on watch. And he starts lying down on the couch in the cockpit and tending to go to sleep. So I had to say to him, "No, watch. You're on watch. That's what it means. Get up and watch." He was a nice guy. He was a professor, geology professor, but there were a few things I just had to sort out.
And that's the thing. I mean, even though it's a 72-foot boat and it's got double galleys or double cabins and that, it's always more cramped conditions than you expect, and it takes everybody to know their role and to chip in, whatever that happens to be.
Yes, that's true, but most sailors realise that the skipper is the skipper.
Yes.
And therefore he makes the decisions.
Yes.
And they respect that, and they're used to that. So, they call me Skip or Skipper, most of the time. So, and I explain why I make certain decisions on things we're doing, and 99.9% of the time, there's not any problem, and everyone gets on. They all enjoy it, and we all have a good laugh, and we enjoy the experience, and that's what it's about.
You mentioned you have your team meetings and you get things out and that type of thing. What have you drawn from your own experience? What has surprised you about what you've needed to be as a leader, a captain, a skipper on this? Because you've got technical needs, ability to navigate. You've got the management of the boats. You've got the logistics as well of just living, and then you've got the team environment as well. What has surprised you about yourself and what you've learned from this?
Well, I find it, I suppose, easier than you might think, because I'm so used to doing it now.
Yes.
It's come second nature to me.
Yes.
But the other thing is I'm very calm, and I don't show concerns.
Yes.
So if people look at me, they'd think, well, there's a calm guy, knows what he's doing, and we just get on with stuff. I don't want them to worry at all. And I'm the one who really knows the boat, all the technical stuff and everything, and they look up to me to do it, but they also want to learn. And so I suppose Yeah, I suppose I've enjoyed doing that's all part of it. And I don't know whether you've read any of the Clipper books. There was a book by, I can't remember the name of it now, of a skipper of one of the Clipper races. And he said really 85, 90% of his job was man management.
Yeah.
The rest of it was the sailing and kind of, so I don't find it difficult to have a word with people or to say, look, by the way, and they all get it and they all understand it.
My guest today is Nick Hine. He is a man who, since 2024, did you say, Nick? You left 2023. You left England then, and you've been sailing around the world with various different crews. And this is now your last stretch, really, isn't it? Once you set off from Cape Town, you'll be back in going straight back.
We'll be hopefully back in the UK by the 2nd to 3rd week of October.
Okay, but that's not that long to go, actually. We'll take a break and then I want to wrap up with Nick in a couple of minutes' time.
You're listening to the Late Late Lunch Show with
Back to the Garden Childcare, where little explorers grow naturally.
You were talking there about the sailing, Nick, and from the limited amount of sailing I've done, what I've actually always found interesting is sometimes it's the beginning and the last bits that are always the most challenging at times. It's like coming into a jetty and making sure that everything's right. People know the rules and you're roping up correctly, etc. And you've got a very big craft coming into a small space. It's also the same sometimes when you're setting off and you're trying to get the winds and navigating other traffic as well. What's it like when you're out on the ocean and you are the only boat around and you might have the moon, for example? It must feel quite unbelievable.
Oh, yes. And the star constellations are lovely. You go past the world where there's little pollution.
Yeah.
And the moon and the stars are lovely. And it's nice. You see the sunrise and you see the sunset. And you just think, wow, is this magical, isn't it? Isn't it great to be out here? And all your worries at home and all the politics and things going on in the parts of the world, you tend to sort of put those aside and forget them. And you just enjoy the moment as best as you can.
And I can imagine it's not exactly the same, but a little bit like the Apollo crew when they were up on the moon. It's sort of, you see the world from a different perspective. You can appreciate it differently.
Oh, yes. I think that's not a bad analogy. Not that I'd like to be on the moon, I don't think. But there you go.
Yeah.
No, it's very nice being out there, and you've got a achievement to make. You know where you're getting to. You're working out your mileage. You're working out the weather, and the communications is very good because these days you can actually have internet, all the way around the world.
Yeah.
So I have access, and you need that in order to be able to get the weather information to work out whether you need to change course or how you're going to manage it.
Well, what has been the most interesting, maybe surprising part of the trip, even from a geographical point of view or a human contact point of view? What has surprised you? Which part of the trip that you've done has surprised you the most?
Well, I enjoyed the Galapagos because of the wildlife was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah,
I enjoyed particularly Indonesia, and there's many different aspects that I've enjoyed. It's very difficult to pick one or two, but I also think that the coral atolls in the middle of the Pacific Ocean are absolutely amazing. And you have to go into these. So what's happened there is that the mountains that were there and the reef that's grown around them, the mountain has actually sunk into the ocean, leaving the reef there. So it's like an internal sea. And there are little gaps through the reefs in which you can go. And so literally you're in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, you're in this sort of little sea with a little island around it with a reef.
Wow.
That's absolutely amazing. And obviously they have sharks and lovely sea life and things like that. So it is an amazing place.
And I imagine at different parts of the trip you have had companions of the sea life type, have you?
Oh, yes. The sea lions come on board in the Galapagos. Obviously, we fish where we can, and catching fish is very nice. So you have fresh fish, sashimi, birds. And the Galapagos, the blue-footed boobies, and boobies come and sit on the push bit at the front to have a little rest particularly at night. Unfortunately, they leave rather nasty deposits on the deck after the next day, which we have to clean off. But yeah, lots of birds, sea life, whales. They're amazing to see whales as well as you're going along. And yeah, dolphins. I mean, everyone loves a dolphin, don't they? Pot of dolphins, and brings a smile to your face, doesn't it?
And thinking about the world, and you talked about actually how small it is now with internet connectivity, and you mentioned the pollution as well, which is shocking in different parts of the world. But has the journey given you any fresh hope about the future of the world, or any change your perspective on the world at all?
Oh yeah, I think there is hope. I mean, in Indonesia, it was lovely because they wanted to study and they wanted to learn. I mean, one lady who showed me around her village, all she'd done was go on TikTok or something like that and learn English from it.
Wonderful.
I'm watching films, things like that. It's astonishing.
Yeah.
And they want to learn and they want to study and they like to know about our country and where we're from and things like that.
Yeah.
So yes, it's so nice to see people like that really wanting to expand. And unfortunately for them, it's difficult for them necessarily to be able to advance because they haven't got the money.
And I often think curiosity is a great skill. And I think about that woman that you were talking about and the questions she would have asked. But when I think also about the people who first circumnavigated the world, and they had curiosity and they had bravery as well, and yet they used what limited technology there was at that time to the maximum that they could have done. Have you reflected on the other people who've made this journey in times gone by with less technology, less equipment, if you like?
Oh, it must have been horrendous. I mean, there's old wooden cult boats they were going in. They're very slow, probably doing 4 or 5 knots. They didn't have much of a keel, so they probably rolled like a pig in the swell. They didn't have water makers, so they used to take water in barrels.
Oh, yes.
They used to get scurvy, as you know, because they didn't have enough fruit and vegetables. How they made those long passages, but they did. And in fact, it was here in the late sort of 16th century that they discovered going around Cape Town, and the trade routes was then formed. So they were one of the first people to sort of sail around. And then, of course, more modern age, you've got people like, Sir Francis Chichester, Robin Knox-Johnson, things like that.
Yes.
Shea Blythe was part of the same race. That was I think about 1968, 69, when the Sunday Times sponsored a round the world race. And yeah, I mean, the things that they had to put up with, and they didn't have half of what we've got now. So sextants, for example, I have a sextant on board, so I can take sightings of the sun and moon, but I don't use it because modern technology means that I know where I am at any one point in time.
Yeah.
So I have utmost respect for those who, and the hardship they must have had. I mean, they had no instruments like we have. They used to take sun sightings and they would roughly work out where they were and they knew what direction they were going in. They may have had some old charts, things like that, but that's about it.
It's quite incredible.
Yeah.
It's quite incredible. So you say you'll be back in England, in the South Coast, October time, did you say?
Hopefully, yes. That's the plan.
And I'm not going to ask what you're most looking forward to, but I'm going to sort of, what's your plans then? Because having done this once, is the temptation to do something similar again, or what are you thinking?
Well, my crew keep telling me to don't stop for long, just keep going and do it again because they come and join me. But I don't think my wife and family would like that very much.
I'm not surprised.
I'm looking forward to seeing them. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't think I want to go back to law because I realise, having stopped it, how stressful that must have been for many years. It was almost like a sort of rucksack being taken off my back.
Yes.
So I might try and teach sailing. I might get involved in the sailing business, or perhaps I could set up a consultancy business advising long-distance sailors who are proposing to do journeys like mine or the Atlantic or just part of the world. what sort of things they need to think about on a boat, having done it, I can really advise them the things they need to think about and what they need to prepare for.
And after all these days at sea, do you still feel the same privilege that you felt when you first set out?
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, people don't think, well, 3 years on a boat. How long does it take you to get 3 years? They can't believe it. Anyway, I've got used to it, and I love it. And I think probably I'll have to sell the boat because obviously it's too big really to keep in the UK. So that'll be a great shame. But hopefully, she'll go to a nice owner who will use her for purpose, which is doing long distance sailing.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I'm so glad that I managed to hook up with you and through David. Is he any good in the galley, Nick, Smitty?
Well, it's a bit early yet because we've been eating out most nights, but I sense that he is, and he and another crew member have pre-made some meals to get us going. So yes. I think he will be good in the galley.
And his scouting skills and whittling skills could be handy if you need to do a repair, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there's all stuff to do. Every day there's stuff to do, I can tell you that.
Well, I'm just glad to see him not being a skipper for once and having to take some orders from somebody else. So that's great. Well, look, it's been an absolute privilege to speak to you. When do you leave Cape Town? What's the departure?
Well, we're hoping to leave tomorrow morning. But I've had the mast off and various repairs being done and a complete service of the mast and rig. That went back on yesterday. We went out for a test sail this afternoon, and you wouldn't believe it, but the Genoa foil came apart and has made a cut in the sail. So that as we speak, they've taken the sail off, they're repairing it, and they're also repairing the foil. So I'm very much hoping that we will still be able to leave tomorrow, but we'll see.
Well, we wish you the very best of luck. And of course, if you want to follow more of the journey, it's stormbirdgoesglobal.co.uk. You can even look for Nick Hine. There's great information, some fantastic photographs there, and you can really get a sense of the journey. Nick, it's been a privilege to talk to you. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
This is the Late Late Lunch Show with Rod Maxwell.
Supported by
Childbird Learning in Nature's Playground.